Hello my friends, welcome back to Premo Cooks. Today we're going to make a gorgeous stuffed squash. I'm going to use both delicata and acorn. I've already roasted them ahead of time. So here's one of my acorn squash and one of the delicata halves. And we are going to let these cool down, make our stuffing, and then we'll scoop these seeds out and stuff them. We have a how-to video on how to roast squash, so you can find the link to that. Learn how to roast the squash the way that I did. I will also have it in the recipe below in written format. For now, let's get started. We're gonna use some really fun ingredients today, and I've prepped everything ahead of time. So we have 1 yellow onion, 1 cup green apple, 2 celery stalks, about a ½ pound of ground Italian sausage, 3/4 cups cranberries that are soaked in hot water right now, 2 tablespoons of grated ginger, a couple teaspoons of thyme, and then 2½ cups of cooked forbidden black rice. If you haven't ever had black rice, it is nutty and chewy. I'll talk about it more at the end. I cooked this ahead of time. You want it to be day old and cold before you start the stuffing. Okay, and then we also have a few other things that I'll talk about as we use them. So first, I have my pan hot. I have 2 tablespoons of coconut oil in here. I'm gonna add in my onion, and followed by a teaspoon of salt. I have this on a medium heat. After your onions have sauteed for a couple minutes, then add your celery stalks. And you want to chop your celery and your onions and your apple all to the same size so that they cook evenly, and each bite of your stuffing is going to have the same perfect combination of bites of apple, celery, onion, cranberry. All right, so we added our apple, celery, ginger, thyme. Stir all this in together. Let this saute for a couple of minutes. We're just checking to see how far along they are, how tender. I don't want them to get too soft. I would like to have a crunch retained in all of the vegetables and the apples and have it not be mushy. So I think I'm gonna move on adding things so that these don't continue cooking too much. Our next round of ingredients to add in is this black rice. And at this point, depending on what vessel you're using, you may wanna add a little bit more coconut oil, which I think I'm going to do just looking at this, or add in the rice and a splash of soup stock, some sort of moisture to keep the rice from sticking to the pan. I'm gonna add a little bit more coconut oil, then add your rice, your sausage, and I obviously cooked the sausage ahead of time, and then our cranberries, which I forgot to strain. So once you have all of your ingredients in there, give it a good stir, and then what we wanna do is add, for some flavor, extra salt content, is coconut aminos, which I'll talk about at the end of the video if you are unfamiliar. We're gonna use 2 tablespoons. I like to eyeball, as you know. 1, 2, might have been a little bit more, we'll see. It's looking gorgeous and smells delicious. This is a really fun combination of ingredients, very fall, very winter. Winter squash specifically, you can generally find in season October through February. So what I want to do now, everything's mixed in, I want to taste it. I will be adding some lemon juice to add a little acidity to balance it out. At that point, I also might want to add in maple syrup to add a little bit of sweetness if the lemon juice overdid it. I also might want to add a little bit more salt because we only used a teaspoon to start with. And the coconut aminos does have a little bit of salty flavor to it, but it also has a sweet note. So let's try, see where we're at with it. Really good. I'm gonna add a little salt, a little lemon juice, taste it again, and then I might add a little bit of maple syrup. But it is very flavorful already. So we'll start with about 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, just a pinch of salt, stir this in, taste it again. And at this point, everything's cooked through. I'm gonna turn my heat down to low just to keep it warm, but I don't need it to keep cooking. Okay, so I'm gonna taste it again. Really good. The ginger really comes through in here, which I like a lot. It adds a little spicy note. But I am gonna add more lemon juice for acidity, add a little tart note in there. So in total, that was probably 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I'm gonna do just a wee splash of grade A dark maple syrup, and then call it good with that, because we're also gonna be adding in some squash in a moment. And the squash is also going to lend sweetness to this dish. And then we'll have a nice balance of salt, sweet, tart. Let's see. So now we have it all combined. I'm gonna taste it one more time. Nailed it, so good. And so now what I wanna do, keep this on low heat. I'm gonna clean a few things up. We're gonna move over to the cutting board and we are going to take the seeds out of these squash and make little boats so that we can stuff it with our black rice stuffing. Be back in a moment. And we're back. We still have our stuffing warming on the stove. We have our delicata and our acorn squash nicely cooled off and easy to handle. So we're gonna move over to the cutting board. And now what we wanna do is take these beauties and we're going to scoop out the seeds, put them back on this plate, and then we'll return to them to do a little boat making. Okie dokie. So we have our squash seeds out. Now what we want to do is make these more boat-like. And depending on the variety of squash or how big the squash was, some of them you'll want to go a little crazier with to dig the flesh out, some you won't. Like this one already, this is looking pretty good. It's very deep. I'm gonna be able to fit a lot of stuffing in there. This is an acorn squash, but I'm gonna make it so that it's about, make like 1/4 inch wall all the way around, maybe 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. And then this, you're gonna put into a bowl, which we will then, once we scoop all of this out, we're gonna be mixing in this acorn squash with the stuffing. So we have our acorn squash. I'm gonna place the acorn on a plate. And before I move on to the delicata, I'm gonna take this acorn squash and I'm gonna mix it in with our stuffing over here. So delicata, these were actually quite large for delicatas. Oftentimes they're a bit smaller, but they usually have so many seeds in them that you don't have to scoop very much out to stuff them. They don't have nearly as much flesh inside as other squash varieties do. I would say too, their skins are the most fragile and thin, so be extra tender with these guys when you're scooping them so you don't rip the skin. Okay, I'm gonna add some of this into the stuffing, and I wanna taste it first because I like the taste of squash, so I wanna remind myself how delicious delicata is. It's really sweet. So I'm not gonna use the whole thing in here. This is optional. And just so you know, I normally don't make this recipe with acorn and delicata. I choose one or the other, but I just wanted to show that you can do them both easily and it's the same process and there's nothing different about it. So now, last thing before we stuff it, I'm gonna turn the heat off so it's not too piping hot for my hands. I'm gonna fold in a little bit of minced parsley just to add a pop of color in there. Once you mix the squash in, it sort of mutes the beauty of that black rice and the apples. So I wanna add some color in there so that it is visually on point. And then we'll save a little bit of the parsley to also garnish with at the end. Give this a taste. It's really nice. Super good, really, really good. It has a nice balance of textures going on as well. Let's see. Okay, what am I doing? Let's stuff some of the acorn squash first. And for now, I'm going to fill the squash just to the top so that it's even, just to make sure I have enough stuffing to go around to each squash. If I end up with additional stuffing at the end, I will make little heap piles of stuffing on top of the squash. It'll be a heaped stuffed squash. So I have probably enough stuffing to maybe fill this last delicata, but I would rather use it to make a make little heap piles of stuffing on each of the rest of the squash. And then we'll have a very bountiful stuffed squash over here with our delicata and acorn. So I'm gonna go around to these and top them off before I garnish them with some parsley. Okay, sprinkle these guys with some parsley. Now we have our black rice stuffed squash with apples, cranberries, and ginger. This beautiful fall winter dish, and these are nice and warm and ready to serve to your guests. They're so beautiful. You could also stick these in the oven at this point at 200 degrees to keep them warm if you're not ready to eat them. And I'm going to talk more about them momentarily, so stick around so I can share the rest of my thoughts with you about this recipe and things that you can do to change it up or not. All right, friends, I don't want to cover anything more about our squash because you can find our how-to video on how to roast squash with all the things you need to know there about squash in general. So let's talk about rice, the black rice in specific. We also have a how-to video on how to make rice, black rice, falls into the same category as far as how you're going to cook it, but I do want to note, as opposed to all other rice, this rice you want to use 1.5 cups water to 1 cup grain. Just trust me, for this recipe, do that. Otherwise you'll have a very mushy, sticky rice. Black rice is awesome. If you've never used it before, look for it at your local grocery store. It also goes by, most commonly called, forbidden black rice. And other substitutions that you can use for this recipe are infinite, really. Take this as a platform, jump off to it, go crazy and go bonkers. You could use a different type of rice. You could use quinoa or millet instead of rice. Take the sausage out, make it vegan. Dried fruits. You could skip the cranberries and go with dried cherries or dried blueberries. Get festive, get creative, use what you have on hand. And hopefully you have fun with this recipe and you can find little squash boats to be less intimidating now. Let us know what you come up with trying this at home in the comments below. Thanks y'all for watching.
Good job, Ed.
I felt like a pretty big dork. Why am I such a dork? Hey y'all, if you didn't know, one of the best ways that you could support my husband and I doing Premo Cooks, if you like our content, would be to like, subscribe, or comment. Any of those things or all of those things would be super appreciated. Thank you for watching. What am I doing? Heap. Make little heap piles. Yum, 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 yum.